Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Cold Case Christmas 2024. In this episode, we're talking about the disappearance of a little 8-year-old girl from Beaumaris in Australia. That little girl was Eloise Worledge, and it appears that she was stolen from her bed on the night of January 12th, 1976. And to this day, Eloise's disappearance has been a complete mystery. Let's talk about it. Eloise Ann Worledge was the first child of Patricia and Lindsay Worledge. She was born in 1967 and 2 siblings followed, Anna in 1969 and then little Blake in 1971. The family lived in suburbs of Beaumaris, and it was a perfect place to bring up children, just 500 metres from the beach. It should have been idyllic. However, Eloise's parents' marriage wasn't a good one. They'd stayed together for a whole decade, but Patricia, known as Patsy, and Lindsay were heading towards divorce. While Patsy immersed herself in her kids and her friends, Lindsay spent more and more time at work, and he was completing his MBA at Monash University. Eventually, they began to build independent lives. Apparently, at the time of Eloise's disappearance, they'd both had extramarital affairs. The couple had agreed to split, but Lindsay didn't want to disrupt his life too much at that point by moving out. He wanted to complete his exams. However, once Lindsay's exams were over, he told Patsy that he needed more time. So they stayed together over Christmas, Eloise's last Christmas, and it was agreed that he would move out in January, so after the holidays. It's been alleged that Lindsay was set to move out on the very day that Eloise disappeared. Was the marital strife a connection to Eloise's disappearance? Well, that has been heavily debated. So what happened? Well, the night of January 12th, 8-year-old Eloise went to bed about 10:30. Her father Lindsay had had a couple of scotches and a bottle of wine with his dinner, and then he continued drinking port whilst watching TV. Lindsay was looking after the kids while Patsy was out. She was doing a jazz ballet class, and then she stopped at her friend's house across the road. She went home to grab a dress that she'd been making to show a friend. When she walked in the house, Lindsay was reportedly in the living room in the darkness with the TV on. Very quickly, she returned home. That was around 10:30, so around the same time that Eloise went to bed. At about 11 p.m, she was doing some chores. She went into Eloise's room, straightened her covers, kissed her goodnight, and then she went to bed herself. And that would be the very last time that Patsy would see Eloise. Lindsay went to bed around 11:40. He said that nothing was out of the ordinary. At around 7:30 the following morning, so the 13th of January, Lindsay and Patsy were awoken by 4-year-old Blake, who came into the bedroom and said that Eloise wasn't there. Patsy got up and went to look for Eloise. She wasn't in her room, her bed was empty. She searched through the house and panic ensued. It did appear to them that the window in her bedroom had been tampered with. The wire fly screen appeared to have been cut and rolled upwards, and the window was fully open. So they called the police and a massive search ensued. That very evening, Lindsay addressed the media appealing for any information that could lead to Eloise's safe return. She wouldn't even go to the shopping centre by herself, and it was his belief that some deranged person had taken her. One senior detective commented on the very likely knowledge the abductor had of the family. It was very probable that the abductor would have known the family, as he knew which window to go to. That's an assumption, but it is a logical one. You know, why would you creep into somebody's window if you didn't know who was going to be in that room? So this window was central to the investigation. In the early days, it was thoroughly examined, but there was no fingerprints or footprints. Moreover, on further inspection, detectives believed that the hole that was cut in the fly screen was too small for a man to have climbed through, and it did appear that it had been cut from the inside, not from the outside, as would have had to have happened if an abductor had got in. The police didn't perceive this as a runaway, i.e. of Eloise cutting the fly screen herself and getting out. In those initial stages, more than 250 police officers and search and rescue personnel, mounted police, the dog squad, and a bunch of independent groups searched for nearly 3 weeks. And within the first 10 days, police canvassed over 6,000 homes in the area with a prepared list of questions. They were able to log 200 suspicious incidents that occurred on the night that Eloise disappeared. These are just some examples. A neighbour on the street, Scott Street, reported seeing a dark green car speed down the street around 2 a.m. Another neighbour reported seeing a green Holden station wagon that she didn't recognise parked near the Worledge's house. And then at approximately midnight, a different neighbour reported seeing a young man walking down the fence line of the Worledge's home that made her feel so uneasy that she crossed the street to avoid him. At around the same time, midnight, another neighbour, so we're now on neighbour number 4, saw a young man jump the fence into the Worledge's property after running in front of her car and across the street. Lots of people out, like late at night on this street. I don't know what's going on. And then at approximately 2 a.m, a fifth neighbour heard a child's cry, a car door slam, and neighbour number 4 also thinks she heard a car door slam. 4-year-old Blake was interviewed by the police, and he'd said he heard robbers. He was too scared to say anything because he thought that they may take him as well. So this is very, Elizabeth Smart-like, isn't it? A sibling that potentially heard something, but he described hearing crackling noises that police believe to be consistent with sounds that might be made on the seagrass floor covering in Eloise's room. On January 19th, so just 6 days after Eloise disappeared, police followed up on new information and took a 23-year-old man in for questioning. However, he was released without charge. Detective Superintendent Fred Warrior at the time said, "This is the best lead we've had so far," but nothing came of it. Police also carefully considered Eloise's parents as potential suspects. One police officer thought that the scene looked staged, that the fly screen cut from the inside was suspicious. Why would you cut the screen at all? Why not come in through the door? Because Patsy said that she'd left it open. Why would you leave your front door open at night? I don't understand that. But if an intruder had got in and stolen Eloise, if the door's wide open, they're not going to be cutting a screen, are they? They're not going to bother. They're just going to come in through the door. So the parents were considered suspects, especially given that there was an impending divorce, given that Lindsay Worledge didn't really want to move out. So the suspicion was that Lindsay had engineered Eloise going missing so that he could stay in the family home. Now, a few weeks after Eloise's disappearance, the Worledges received a ransom note. The note was addressed to Patsy and signed Fred. But this was a hoax, a horrific hoax. Eventually, the person who sent that note, someone called Kenneth Benfield, was found and was charged in 1995. Now, he would only have been 17 at the time of Eloise's disappearance, but still disgusting, and he was charged for it. Now, in 2001, there was a new team brought in and a complete reinvestigation. But this new investigation didn't find anything new. It focused mainly on known sex offenders, including a teacher and a librarian at Beaumaris Primary School, as well as a man who coached at the Beaumaris Junior Soccer Club. But despite knowing that these people were in the area, could have potentially come into contact with Eloise, there was no evidence to link any of them with her disappearance. Detective Chief Inspector Albert Homburg, who led the renewed search efforts, confirmed that detectives were still attempting to trace the green Holden station wagon that was seen on the street at the time of Eloise's disappearance. It remains the only vehicle near the Worledges' home on the night that couldn't be accounted for. He also revealed that investigators were looking for a man who'd been spotted around Beaumaris in the days before Eloise vanished, described as a balding elderly man with glasses, who had been seen in the company of young girls near the local shopping centre. But nothing came of that either. At this time, Patsy Worledge shared a chilling belief with detectives, allegedly, that she suspected her estranged husband of being involved in Eloise's disappearance, claiming that it could have been a twisted attempt to prolong their failing marriage and to spite her. Obviously, Lindsay denied having any role in Eloise's abduction. Interestingly, he took a polygraph, which came back inconclusive, but I don't hold much stock in polygraphs, so make of that what you will. It's true that Lindsay was suffering from depression and he was drinking far too much at the time that Eloise disappeared, but I do think it's a bit of a stretch. There was no evidence at all. You know, there was neighbours out that night. No one saw Lindsay taking Eloise anywhere, so I don't know. A coroner's inquest was held in 2003, which brought to light even more unsettling revelations about the family. Detectives had uncovered links between Eloise's family and two local child abusers, one who worked in a shop frequented by the family, while the other had ties to a Beaumaris drama group that the family had visited on occasion. These potentially could have been places where paedophiles might have seen Eloise and befriended members of the family, but it doesn't mean to say that her family handed Eloise away. You know, it doesn't mean that at all. And there's no concrete evidence that either of these people were involved in Eloise's disappearance. Ultimately, the coroner, Frank Hender, was unable to determine who was responsible. The police investigation had led nowhere. The coroner, based on the information that he'd received from the police, also led nowhere. He ruled that her disappearance and presumed death remained suspicious, but could not conclusively implicate anyone, whether it be her parents, whether it be local sex offenders, or anyone else. The mystery of what happened to Eloise Worledge is still right there to this day. Will we ever know? Possibly not. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next episode of Cold Case Christmas. Bye, guys.